Are you fed up with sitting alone in an empty room talking while nobody's listening? Then follow the video. I need to get a life. Hello and welcome on how to build an audio room application with React. By the end of this video, we will build an application such as Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse. Well, we might not have the full design there, but the functionality will mostly be there. Specifically, we'll build an application that has support for backstage mode so that hosts can have a conversation before going live with the room. The call will run on Stream's global edge network, so performance will be really good no matter where you are. You can have as many listeners as you want in one room. And we will even add functionality for listeners to raise their hand and allow hosts to accept their speaking requests or deny them. So let's first take a look at how the end result will look like. Here we have the app, which might not win a design award, but it's fully functional. So right now I'm logged in as a listener and I can unmute myself and mute myself again, going from speakers to listeners, and go live or stop going live. We offer an accompanying application that is hosted on the web so that we can test out the application. Right now it's not live, so let's first go live and then we can join the room. We can unmute ourselves or unmute, and we can even stop going live, and then the room will end again. So now that we know what we want to build, we can get started. But before we do that, I want to quickly show you that we have this tutorial also in written form on our website, and I will share the link in the description of the video. You can scroll down and we will go there actually to test out the application, because you will get some sample credentials for this. But since you're here, you probably prefer the video format. So let's get started. We start off in our terminal and create the project first. So let's run yarn create with this command here, audio rooms, with the template of React TypeScript. We can cd into the project and next add the stream dependency for the video React SDK. While it's called video SDK, it also includes all the audio functionality that we need. It's kind of matching, right? Okay, it's finished. So let's open this up in VS Code. I trust the authors as it's me. And first we want to run the app now. And we switch to the browser, now seeing the template. The project is set up, so we can start coding now. We want to start from scratch. So let's first get rid of everything. Well, not everything. We keep the app.css. Import. The first thing we need to create are a few constants. First, we need an API key to identify which application in the Stream backend we're working with. Next is a user token, so that we can authenticate our user, which is just a JWT. Then we create a user ID and use a call ID. Now you might be wondering where you should get these credentials from. And the first possibility is that you create your own application at dashboard.getstream.io. I will leave the link in the description. Or for the sake of simplicity, we can jump back to the React Audio Room tutorial, scroll down a little bit, and get all of this information for free. So we can use the API key, the token, the user ID, and the call ID here, which are tailored towards you. So they're generated specifically for you, and you can use these. So next up, we create a user with the user ID that we have. We give it a handsome name, and then we can start by creating the client from the Stream Video Client class, giving it the API key, the user that we just created, and a token. We can then use the call ID to create a call variable and call the call.join function, adding some data such as a title and a description to it. And with that, we have all the data necessary to join an audio room. Of course, nothing will show yet because we haven't yet added any UI. So let's recreate the app element first and then fill it first with the stream video object that we hand the client towards. Now this is necessary because in all components that are beneath that in the DOM, we want to have access to the client, and with that we can simply inject it. Then we add a stream call object and hand in the call. This is necessary because we want to also have access to the call in the other components here, and we'll provide some useful hooks for that. And for that to work, we need to wrap it in the stream call object. So everything is still red, so we need to add a few classes, specifically the stream call, stream video client, and the user. We save this and we can take a look at our application right now. That looks fantastic, right? Of course not, but we have a good starting point and we can now start building out the UI. We will start building out the UI and custom components and then merge everything together in the end. So let's head back to VS Code. Let's open up the Explorer here and start by creating a new folder here called components. And let's start by creating a new file and call it mydescriptionpanel.tsx. We close the sidebar to see a bit more. And first we import the use call state hooks. This is one of the examples that we have that the Stream SDK offers for convenient access to functionality that we need. Then we start by creating the mydescriptionPanel component. We first extract the call custom data and the participants to get the custom data object that we created with the title and the description of the room, and also the participants for the current call. Then we create a simple div that we fill up with the title, the description, and the current participant count. We can save this and we're already done for the description panel. Next, we create a new file called the myParticipants.panel. It's again a TSX file. We open it up and start filling it with content. So let's close the sidebar again and start filling it up. First we want the avatar because we want to show some images of the users. And the cool thing is that Stream SDK comes with some built-in components that we can use. We can also build custom ones, but for this use case, it's pretty nice to have some pre-built UI ready to just plug in. And again, we want to have access to the call state. We create our component called myParticipants.panel. We import the hook of use participants again and extract the participants from that. We can then create a new div with the class of participants.panel if we want to style it. We enter a title and then we map over all the participants and show each one. We can use the session ID of each participant as a key here and then just render the avatar, so the image of the participant, as well as their name. Let's go ahead and save this and come to the next UI element that we want. We're showing a description of the current room as well as a list of participants. Now we also need some controls to control, for example, whether we are muted or not, and to go live with the room. So let's open up the sidebar again, create a new component. You know the drill by now. Let's call it myControlsPanel.tsx. And first close the sidebar again. Then we get started by creating the components first. So the myControlsPanel one. We don't need any logic for now, but we create a new div with the controls panel. And then we add a mic button for muting and unmuting, as well as a live button for going live and unlive, not live again. We'll create these components in a second. So let's first save the file. In order to combine the panels that we just created, let's create a wrapper element and call it myUILayout.tsx. Again, we close the sidebar, and then we get started by creating the component. Call it my UI layout, create a wrapper with a class name of UI layout. We will add the CSS in a second. And we add the my description panel that we created, the participants panel, as well as the controls panel. And of course, we need to add imports here. So let's do that. We can save now, and we have a basic layout that we want to show. So let's jump back to app.tsx, scroll down here and uncomment this. So we want to show the UI layout that we also need to import. Cool. Now the only two things remaining are the microphone button as well as the go live button. So let's build these next. We start off with the live button. So let's open up the side panel again, create a new file here, call it my live button.tsx, and close the sidebar. Again, we first need to import two things, the use call hook and the use call state hook. This one's new. So we now have access to the call specifically because we want to go live or unlive again, right? Next, we create the my live button component, and we start by importing the call from the use call hook. We then request the use is call live hook from the use call state hooks, and we use that to determine whether the call is currently live or not. We then create the button, which either has the live CSS class if it's live or not. We then add the onClick method, which is going to be async. And if we are currently live, then, well, we call the stop live function of the call, and otherwise we call the go live function. So we get a lot for free by just using the built-in hooks that the SDK offers. Finally, we either say stop live or go live, depending on the state of the current call. With that, the live button is done, and we only need to add the mic button. So we go to the components, new file, my mic button.tsx, and we need to do a lot of the same thing again here. We import the use call state hooks. We create the component, and then we want to use the use microphone state hook to have access to the microphone. We check the current state and whether we are muted or not at the moment, and we also get access to the microphone. Then we create the button, give it a CSS class, and create the onClick function that is basically similar to the go live button. We check whether we're muted right now or not. If yes, then we want to enable the microphone. If not, we disable the microphone. Again, with the hooks and the constants that we get here, it's really easy to add this functionality. Lastly, we show the text mute if we're currently not muted, and unmute if we're currently muted. Yeah. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is in our controls panel, we need to add the imports. For this, we save this and should now be able to check whether that worked. So let's switch back to the browser, and we can already see that parts of the UI are here. Again, here's the reminder that we're at the local host at the moment. So we can already see that we are shown as the participant here, and we can now either unmute ourselves or go live. To see and prove that this is live, we can now join this from the web. So we go back to the tutorial. Again, this is the React Audio Room tutorial. We scroll down to the credentials section, and we can simply click on the join call button here. This is an application that's hosted on the Stream backend, so we can fully interact with this. And it currently says the room isn't live. Please wait until the host opens it. So we go back to our application, we unmute ourselves, we hit the go live button, we check back, and now the room is live. So we can join this, and we can see ourselves as one of the listeners here. And here we see that Count Doku has joined. Cool. With that, we created a basic UI, and we have a lot of the functionality already there that we wanted to create. Now there's one more thing missing, because we want to also allow participants to request the rights to speak. And inside of our application, we want to accept or deny these requests. So let's see how we can do that. We start off by going back to VS Code and do what we love most and create a new component, who would have thought, and call it my permission requests panel.tsx. We close the sidebar again, you know the drill. Now there are a few more things that we need to do inside here compared to the other ones, so let's start. We need to add the necessary imports again, so we use the call data, and now we also want to have access to the permission request event, and I'll get to that in a second. Next, we also need to use callback, use effect, and use state hook from React. Then we can start by creating our component called the my permission requests panel that you already saw. Of course, we need access to the call, and then we set a state variable called permission requests of the permission request event type that we just imported. Next, we initialize a use effect hook that's dependent on the call. And what we do now is we subscribe to events on the call. This is a powerful feature by the Stream Video SDK, that you can get notified of many events that are happening. And I will add a link in the description that explains this concept in more detail. For now, we just need to know that with that, we can listen to all the permission request events that are happening on the call. So what we want to do, once one of these requests comes in, we extract the request from the event and cast it to the type permission request event. And then we add it to our current permission requests array that we have inside of our component. Next, we of course need to also handle these permission requests. So let's see how we can do this. First, we create a new function. We wrap it in the use callback to avoid any unnecessary rendering. And we'll get a request inside, as well as the information whether we have accepted or denied the request. We extract the user as well as the requested permissions that the user wants from the request. And then we wrap this in a try catch block, because we might run into errors here. And then we say if the request gets accepted on the call, we simply say grant permissions, and we extract the ID from the user and set the permissions that we got from inside the request. If the permission gets denied, we will simply revoke these permissions. Again, the SDK comes in really handy, because a lot of the functionality that we want is already guaranteed to be supported by the SDK itself. Lastly, we need to set the current permission requests to filter out the current one, because we just handled that. Now we want to build UI around this if we have permissions. We check if the permission length is length. That was too German. We check if the permissions requests length is 0, which is a bit weird in JavaScript, but hey, we return null in that case, so we don't want to render anything. Otherwise, we create a container for the permission requests. We give it a headline, and then map over all the permission requests that we have in the current state. Again, we create a simple container, because we love divs, right? Who doesn't? And we say the current username requested to request a certain permission. We add a button that says on click, we handle the permission request. In this case, true, because that would be the approve button. And if we can approve it, we can also deny it. So we handle the permission requests again, this time with the false parameter, and we add the deny option. Now the last thing remaining is we need to show this, of course. So let's open up our my UI layout file and add the my permission requests panel here and import it. And with that, the UI is ready. or is it? Because one last thing we want to add is to show whether a participant is just a listener or is been promoted to being a speaker. So we go to the participants panel and add this functionality. So what we have right now is a simple list of participants. Now what we'll do is we will add a new speakers constant and we will filter the participants whether they have audio or not. Now, how do we determine whether a user has audio enabled or not? We will create a convenience function here and we will call it const has audio, which gets a stream video participant put in. We can update the import. And then we check whether the published tracks of them includes an audio track. Again, we need to import the SFU models. And now we have speakers and listeners distinct from each other. We just need to render them. Now this part is also easy. So we change this here from participants to speakers. We map over the speakers. Easy as that. Then we duplicate this and simply say this is not speakers but listeners, and we have a typo, speakers. And instead of the speakers, we iterate over the listeners. With that, we have the distinction between speakers and listeners, and we can see if this works in the app as well. So let's jump into our application to see how it looks. We already have the speakers and listeners distinction here. We have the Count Doku as one of the listeners and ourselves as well. We can unmute ourselves and see us jump to the speakers. Poor Count Doku is still a listener. So what can we do about that? Well, we can request permission to speak now, right? So we switch to the application here. We raise the hand, we wait for permission to speak, and we see that the Count Doku request to send audio has popped up. We can either approve or deny it. I want to see what he has to say, because like Sith Lords are usually pretty wise, right? So let's approve his request. And he is now a speaker. He needs access to a microphone. And with that, he has now become a speaker in our application. We can now stop the live and see that for Count Doku, the audio room has ended. And with that, we have proved that we've built a fully functional application that might need some more design work. I'm no designer, so I wouldn't know. But functionality-wise, we have done it. Awesome. With that, we have come to the end of this tutorial, but we have achieved quite a few things. We have started completely from scratch. We have built up the UI to create calls, to create audio rooms, to join them, to handle permission requests, to allow speaking, to go live, to be backstage. There's a lot we have done, and we have verified that it works in combination with the web application that Stream gives us. Now, if you want to learn more, you can also go to our other tutorials. So on our website, I will leave the link in the description here. We also have video calling and live streaming tutorials and much more content in our documentation. So feel free to take a look at that. And with that, all that's remaining for me is to say thank you for following the tutorial. We're excited to see what you will build with it, and we wish you all the best for it. See you next time.